Hi, I'm Dr. Scott Dick, and I'm your host for today's segment of Your Town. I'm here with Kim DiBaenedetto, one of our fabulous realtors working in our area. Kim, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
The reason I wanted you to come today is because I want to talk high-end real estate. We see, anybody who looks at the real estate sections of the newspaper sees these fabulous, gorgeous, giant homes. Right. And I want to sort of get a feel and let our viewers get a feel for what it's like north of San Luis Obispo all the way to the Bay Area. Can you describe that market and what's happening with it?
Sure. Every market is very segmented. And so what happens in Pebble Beach and Carmel is going to be very different than what happens in southern Monterey County or in the San Francisco Bay Area. So all real estate is local, as we're always told. And but we have a fantastic high-end real estate market. And what's nice about it is we have multiple markets around us that feed into our market. So whether it's the San Francisco Bay Area or whether it's the Central Valley or even people coming from Texas, we have lots of lots of other communities that feed into our high-end market as second, third, fifth homes.
Is it like international or national? Is it what's the mix right now?
Definitely national with some international. When you get to the San Francisco Bay Area, you're going to see more international. Those types of buyers are usually looking for larger cities and easy access with airports and such.
Sure.
We have a wonderful local airport that does actually assist with all of our second homeowners that are coming in, as well as the two jet centers. So we're accessible that way, but it's just not as large of a city as some of the international buyers want. And some of them come and look for that because we're not the big city, right? So,
right, exactly. Yeah. So I noticed the private jets flying in from my office is very far away from the airport, and I see them coming in.
You hear them.
Yeah, I hear them. I see them too. So how far does the high-end market, and first, what do we consider to be the high-end market?
I usually look 5 million plus. So when you're looking at anything up to 3-4 million, average sales prices in Carmel and Pebble Beach can be $2 million. So, right. But then when you go outside of our area, you get up to the San Francisco Bay Area and the prices actually go up. Their market is much more aggressive because they have more primary residence homeowners in the higher end. So there's a lot of competition for those properties. In our area, it's some primary residence homeowners in the high end and a lot of secondary homeowners. And so the demand is there, but it's not the same type of demand.
So how far down our southern Monterey County does the high-end market extend?
So as far as going down to southern Monterey County, it's going to drop off after you get past Big Sur. I mean, Big Sur is really kind of our high-end southern Monterey County market, but then once you get into San Luis Obispo and those areas, they have, that would be a completely different market. And then for different reasons.
Sure, and then it starts to shrink, and then I imagine when you get to Santa
Barbara, Montecito, just before you hit Los Angeles, and of course the Malibu coast.
Sure. Well, let's bring it back up to where to reality for me anyway. And what's the market? I mean, what actually transpires? I was going to say, what is the market like? But what actually transpires when a homeowner decides to put up a high-end piece of real estate? Well,
typically, what we saw two and a half years ago, there were some really high-end properties in Pebble Beach in particular that came onto the market for various reasons, and they were in high-demand locations right near the lodge, and that hadn't happened in forever. And so what we saw 2 to 2.5 years ago was some record-breaking sales that had never happened even in the previous height of the market. We broke a record in Pebble Beach at $32 million for the highest sale. And so now everybody kind of thinks their house is worth $20 million, and they're not all.
Of course they do.
So everybody's reaching for that 20 million mark now, and some of them get there, some of them don't. But
but
it's nice to try. Yes.
So then, the process is it and this is a funny question, but do you spend more time and effort on a higher end property than you would? I mean, it's kind of a loaded question.
Right. Well, so those properties can take up to 2 years to sell.
Oh, of course.
You know, so it's definitely up to a year, sometimes 2, depending on how aggressive it's all in the pricing, really. So, and that is regardless of the price point. You know, when a seller decides to kind of shoot for the stars with their pricing, they have to realize they're going to spend a little more time on the market. That's the major difference between us and the San Francisco Bay Area. In the Bay Area, because they have more primary residence buyers, they have more sheer numbers of people, those sellers tend to price to the low end of the price range, and then they get multiple offers and build their price back up. In our area, which can be a disconnect for the buyers coming from the Bay Area, our sellers tend to price to the high end of the price range because we don't have that same demand, and many of them will end up doing price reductions before they actually get their offers and get it into contract.
I see.
That's the primary difference.
I heard 2 interesting statistics about the Bay Area market. One, last year or the year before, they were getting $300,000 and $400,000 over asking price.
$1 million over asking
see
in
that
cases, yeah. And so that's what happens when you build up the demand.
Sure.
You know, but if you price to the high end, I always say there's 2 ways you know you haven't given away your money as a seller. Either you're going to get showings and no offers, and then you know you're close. But if you're not even getting showings, then you know you're farther off the mark.
That's a really good indicator. The other interesting statistic I heard is that it's very possible, and this was a concern for local policymakers in San Francisco and the area, is that it's conceivable that San Francisco could become a childless city by, I think they said 2030, maybe even 2050.
Wow.
That no families could afford to live there.
Right.
Except very exclusive families, and
Right.
they were throwing around that idea that, can you imagine San Francisco with no
Well,
children?
Certainly the San Francisco Bay Area makes us look like a deal down here. It really does. We think our prices are high, and people come down from the Bay Area all the time and think, wow, this is better than I expected it to be, or this is a really good value, because we're not with the exception of downtown Carmel, you're not in a downtown area, and downtown Carmel is just so charming still. So it's not like you're in an inner city like they are in San Francisco.
Sure.
And so you just get more for your money. It's just a different location.
I had a chance to meet and talk a little bit with a government affairs director from Aspen. And of course I asked them what their median home price was. It was $8 million.
Wow.
To put that in perspective.
Yes. See?
And then from Hawaii, he was talking about 1.5. He's a government affairs director from Kauai.
Right.
1.5 million was the median.
I really think that on the Monterey Peninsula, we have very good values for being coastal and having limited amounts of land to build on and to develop, and the heritage and the charming communities that we have here. Pacific Grove is very different than Pebble Beach and Carmel Valley and Big Sur. So there's something for everyone, and it just depends on what the buyer is looking for and what their goals and priorities are. But there's something for everyone here, and really, when you compare us to other high-end markets, we are a good value.
So what do you think are some of the critical points about selling a high-end property? I mean, not everybody is, some people sell what could become a high-end property because they've lived there forever, and they finally want to change, trade up, move, go someplace else for whatever reason, I don't know.
Right.
But
yeah, no, well, you would be surprised at the number of the higher-end properties that are really, they've been in the same families for so many years, and so they're dated. And, but that's just the way they always were, so that's the way they keep them. And then the new buyer comes in and does their... The other thing I find, actually, is that with the high-end buyers, they want to create their own thing. They don't want to buy a house with somebody else's plans. They don't want to, they want their own thing. And so really it doesn't matter so much as the location matters to them. And the house is pretty much secondary, and view will matter to them. But the house is secondary because they'll create what they want.
Well, I remember before I had this job and was involved in any kind of real estate, that it was pretty common that when during the build up to the boom or during the boom, a family would buy I'm going to say out of towners, but I don't mean that in a pejorative way.
Right.
Would buy a house in Carmel and then doze it.
Right, right. Well, there's certainly a lot of construction going on the peninsula again, as you can tell, going up and down our streets. So that has taken off again,
Oh, really?
But people are, I think they're being a little more reasonable with what they're doing and trying to fit into the community. And, certainly the cities and the county have great control over that as well. So
I remember asking about the price for a demo permit, and it's something like you could demo a house for $10,000.
Right.
So for a lot of people, that's not a lot of money.
That's not a lot of money, right?
Especially to be able to get the property where they wanted it.
That's the thing. When you have a lot, you're looking at the positioning of the house on the lot with respect to the view and the neighbors, and so you want to position it just right to optimize the value. And so if the house isn't currently, because I don't think they paid as much attention to some of those details 50, 60 years ago when they were building homes. And so if it makes sense, sometimes it's easier to bulldoze what's there and start over. Sure. But sometimes it makes sense, especially if there's some sort of historicity with the property, to work with what's there and enhance it. So it just depends on the property.
Do you have, I know this is kind of an off the wall question, but do you have any idea what a buyer who decides to purchase a home, for example, my house was built in 1967, what they're spending now to get it up to where they like it after they purchase a house? Yeah,
it depends on their level of taste, but it starts about $350 a square foot and goes up from there. Some of the homes are $650 a square foot.
Wow.
For the level of construction that they desire.
After they doze it, but just saying living within the bones of a existing structure.
Living with the bones, then you're looking to that lower end of the price range. But still, even if you're remodeling a home that's of a certain age, you're redoing electrical, plumbing, roofing, everything.
Sure.
So it kind of ends up being the same.
As building.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah. Because, you're still going to go in and take all the kitchens and the bathrooms out. It's the finishes that you spend your money on. And so it just depends on the level of the finishes, really.
So you really have to, in a high-end market, and let's just discount San Francisco for a minute, because if you're getting $1 million over offer, they have money to spend on a remodel, even if it's a 2-bedroom penthouse.
Right.
But here, I think a buyer who is of, let's say, means that aren't inexhaustible, they'd have to make a consideration about the bones of the place. Right. And how much should a person leave in a normal human being leave in reserve after they?
I would still look at a good $300 a square foot for an average type home for our area.
And that's just
because you look at our labor costs are higher. It's more expensive to get things here to our area. It's just not the same. You can go to Fresno and probably build something for $150 to $200 a square foot. I'm just throwing numbers out there. I don't know.
Yeah, that's okay.
But it's a larger community. The labor costs are not as high. So
there's a little more room to build. I think maybe permitting is a different issue because it's not coastal.
Yeah.
They don't have the coastal commission to work with.
You can see a lot of 10,000 square foot homes in the Fresno area. A lot of them. We just don't really build to that extent here unless it's a major estate in Pebble Beach. But, most of those have 2 people living in them as a second home, too. So,
wow. Speaking of Central Valley, what kind of traffic do we get from the Central Valley here?
A lot. We get a lot. And it's in all price ranges. They like to come over and when it's so hot in the summertime. So we have that natural air conditioning that they don't have.
I know a lot of realtors love the other segments of the market. How do you how do you enjoy that's a dumb question. No. Do you enjoy the high end? Let's put it that way.
Of course I do. But you have to balance it out with other price ranges because, as I said, those homes don't sell every day. In Pebble Beach, we sell 8 to 12 homes a month. In the $5+ million price range, we sell 0 to 2 a month. So the numbers are just not there for everyone to do it, and the numbers are just not there for you to only do $5 million plus. You really have to balance it out with whatever you're comfortable with as an agent, but if you want to do a certain number of transactions, there's just not enough of to just do that.
So you have to expand your horizons really and be open to.
Yeah. I always say I like to work with people that I like and respect, and they respect me and my time, and that way it's a wonderful working relationship. It doesn't matter to me so much the price point as the people that I'm working with.
It is about the people-to-people connection, and then also some sellers want to have a connection with the buyers, which seems sort of interesting.
Yeah, it's kind of more of a new phenomenon, but it's not one that I discourage, because sometimes, most of the time, if the seller really likes the buyer, they're going to be much more flexible in the process, which helps.
You mean easier to work with?
Yes.
You could say that, it's okay. So if somebody was going to come into this market, and they had like normal means for this area, so what would be the first step in looking at properties? Well,
the National Association of Realtors tells us 96 or 98% of the people out there start their search online. So they go to all the websites online and see what you can get and what it sold for last and all that stuff. So the value that we bring to the table is really not in finding the specific house. It's more in our negotiation and legal abilities to represent them. So what buyers typically will do, the typical pattern is they look online, they find some things they like, then they come to the area if they're from out of the area, or if they're here locally, they look in the open house directory. They typically are going to go out and look at open house. And then they're going to meet different agents at different open houses, and they're going to kind of find who they click with, who they like, who they think said something interesting or to their liking, and then they'll usually start with an interview type process after that.
And that tells me that once that happens, then because of your knowledge of the market, you can, after they've looked at open houses, you may know something that's not on the market.
Right.
The president of MCAR, Mark Bruno, said that knowledge of the market is really important because you may be able to bring them to a house that
nobody else knows about.
Exactly.
Yeah. But I think just your overall level of knowledge, because the buyers come to us so much more prepared than what they used to, because they're looking at everything online. They know what all the houses are selling for. And that's why, as a seller, you have to be very careful with your pricing, because it's not like we're pulling the wool over anybody's eyes anymore.
Right.
Yeah.
It's out there for everybody.
It's out there for everyone to know. Yeah.
Well, Kim, thank you so much for coming on Our Town. It's been a pleasure, and I hope you'll come back.
I will. Thank you.
Thank you much. That's this segment of Your Town.